Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. Um, Today, I hope to be able to read from verses 30 onwards in Surah Baqarah. And before I begin reading, it may be worthwhile to kind of point out that at least the verses that I'm hoping to cover are giving us a very clear picture of human origins vis-a-vis the creation of God. It places us in a pretty high position, if not the highest position, in the system that God has created. And um, it talks about the very foundation of our existence in a very powerful kind of a way. And this is being done in Surah Baqarah, verses 30 to 39. Um, and of course, elsewhere in the Quran. But if we are interested in finding out what the Quran has to say about where we come from and how we began, um, this is an answer. Okay, without further ado, let's begin. As usual, I will try to read the Arabic first, followed by the English translation of the words, and share any thoughts that I have on them. Um, okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the merciful, in the name of God, the one whose mercy touches us every moment and whose mercy is continual. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And when said your Lord to the angels, Inni, I am going to place in the earth a vicegerent, they said, will you place in it one who spreads corruption in it and will shed blood, while we glorify you with gratitude, and we sanctify for you? He said, Inni, I know what you do not know. What is happening here? God is speaking to the angels, announcing to them his decision of wanting to place a vicegerent on earth. What's recorded here is both God's declaration of this intention to the angels as well as the angels' response to it. So, going once more over the verse, what God is saying here is that in me, I am going to place in the earth a vicegerent. So, that is the function of human beings, that we are supposed to be God's vicegerent. In fact, we are God's vicegerent. We often, most of us have no idea, right? We wonder about our existence to the point that many of us find no meaning in it. We live our lives as if we have goals that are very different from serving as the vicegerent of the Maker himself. And that is true for most of us. First of all, we don't have a clue that this is the case. We may hear of it from many different sources, but I don't think it really resonates with us or has any relevance to our thoughts, plans, decisions about our lives, and about the everyday conducting of affairs that happens in our lives. Like, we do not um, either express any awareness of it, nor do we act on any such belief. And yet, that is what God told the angels, that He is going to place us on earth as His vicegerents. The angel's response here is extremely interesting, informative, and fascinating. Inni, I am going to place in the earth a vicegerent. They said, will you place in it one who will spread corruption in it and will shed blood, while we glorify with gratitude and sanctify for you? Clearly, there is an expression of dissatisfaction with God's decision, because implicitly the angels are saying here that they probably deserve the role. And in their minds, if there is such a thing, the role requires a twofold function, one of which is to glorify God, to be grateful for the opportunity to do so, and to purify for God. In contrast, the angels are pointing out something that we know is completely true, which is that we corrupt the earth. We humans corrupt the earth, and we cause bloodshed in it. Factually true, transhistorically true, universally true. We have been steadily making the earth a much worse place than it has ever been, if you believe in the account of any environmentalist. Common sense suggests exactly the same thing. And we shed blood, right? Um, Humans by far shed the most human blood, have shed the most human blood than any other animals can be held accountable for. The angels are spot on. God's response to that is, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamun. Inni, I know what you do not know. So the angels are allowed to ask questions of God, to challenge God's decision. So think of the freedom that our Almighty is according to these angels, but also they are being put in their places, which is that they do not have the knowledge that only the creator and the maker of all these various entities can possess, logically speaking, right? Um, I think the next verses are critical in providing a clue as to what it is that the angels do not know. Verse 30. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثُمَّ عَرَضَهُمَا على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين. Translation. And he taught Adam the names, all of them. Then he displayed them to the angels and said, "Inform me of the names of these if you are truthful, if you are speaking the truth." A clear demonstration is going on here. The angels challenge God's decision, and God's response to them is that what they're saying is based on a dearth of knowledge on their part. And presumably speaking, he is demonstrating what that gap in knowledge is about. He teaches Adam, the first human, by all accounts, by all scriptural and historic accounts, I guess, that we believe in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and in many other traditions as well. And according to the Quran, the logic seems to be that right after he had said um, that he's going to place a vicegerent on earth, he's talking about Adam. So that must mean that Adam is a human, the representative human. So he taught Adam the names, all of them. Names have been historically thought of as being a synonym for language itself. And the Quran repeatedly draws attention to the significance that God's words have for human beings. It underlines throughout the entirety of itself, the text itself, how critical it is for humans who are looking to improve themselves, to find guidance, to hold firmly to only the words of God, not diluted by any kind of human intervention. In the demonstration that's ongoing here in verse 30, he teaches Adam the names of everything. I'll take that literally, the names of everything. So we have here a creature, a human being, who knows the names of everything. A far cry from any descendant of an ape-like creature that modern science tells us is the human predecessor we have, historically speaking. And he challenges the angels and asks them to repeat that procedure, to be able to basically demonstrate that they can do what Adam is being asked to do. The angel's response is very interesting. What they say is recorded here in verse 31. قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Glory be to you, they said. No knowledge for us except what you have taught us. Inna, you are the knower. You are wise. they back off. And the basis for their backing off, as articulated here, is that they realize collectively that all glory belongs to God. God is above everything and anything that you can ascribe to him, including the angels. And they concede that they do not have any knowledge within themselves except for what God has taught them. And they concede that God is the one who knows everything and who is wise, which means they themselves do not have the same level of knowledge or understanding or wisdom that God has. So basically conceding that God knows best whether or not humans or they themselves, meaning angels themselves, are more suited to the task of undertaking God's vicegerency in this world. Okay, the demonstration continues. Verse 32. Qala ya Adamu anbi'uhum bi asma'ihim. Falamma anba'ahum bi asma'ihim qala alam aqul lakum inni a'lamu ghayba as-samawati wal ardi wa a'lamu ma tubdun wa ma kuntum taktumun. He said, O Adam, inform them of these names. And when he had informed them, he did inform them of these names, of their names. God said, did not I say to you that I know the invisible, the unseen, the ghaib? This word, we talked a lot about it in the earlier discussions, is recurring here. In the unseen in the heavens and the earth, and I know what you reveal and what you hide. So what is going on here? Adam is being asked to repeat the names that he has just been taught by God. Adam does so successfully. God speaks to the angels, reminding them that he had told them that he knows the unseen in the heavens and the earth. But not only that, that he knows what they reveal as well as what they hide. We as readers are not being told about what the angels are hiding here. But the conversation is telling us very clearly one thing, which is that God has motives that may seem extremely inscrutable, completely inaccessible. And if the angels are failing to understand God or have failed to understand God, it is because their level of knowledge is much lower and smaller than God's. And God himself is reminding them of that fact and of the fact that he knows not only all that is visible and invisible in the heavens and the earth, but also in their innermost souls, if they have such a thing, in the innermost parts of their being, whatever is hidden is not hidden from God. He is aware of both what they make visible and accessible, as well as what the angels, or for that matter, anybody, keeps hidden within themselves. This level of knowledge of God, of being the all-knowing, of being informed about everything, including what is visible as well as what is invisible, places God on a plane that is completely inaccessible for humans, but not just humans, but also of angels who are clearly significant enough for God to consider them important enough to receive the communication that he was making a decision about placing someone as the vicegerent on earth, and who also have the clearly authorized by God right to demur. Um, so knowledge, God's knowledge, is being highlighted here, the full extent of it, its difference from other forms of knowledge, other beings' knowledge. And I think the other thing that plays a huge, huge role in these few verses that I've read so far, and continues to show its importance throughout the entirety of the Quran, is God's power over the word, over language, and simultaneously of how human significance, human importance, human role of God given role, that is, the human role that has been assigned by God of vicegerency for this world, being dependent on the capacity to know names and be able to repeat those names. I just have a kind of a question here more than anything else that I think it might be worthwhile to kind of share. And the question is, if it is merely a matter of what God lets his different creations know, because ultimately the angels are pointing out that they only know what God has taught them. And Adam, it's made very explicit here, is able to tell the names of everything because God teaches Adam the names of everything. So ultimately, it's not so much as the difference in what angels know and what the humans know, but more a question of what God teaches each of these groups to know. That seems to decide who gets the vicegerency in this case. Just a thought. Moving on. I'm reading verse 33 now. وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ أَسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسَ أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And when we said to the angels, Asjudu, do sajda. It's translated as prostrate here. I do not agree with this translation because asjudu also means to salute, to basically demonstrate a mark of respect for someone. Think of what happens in military parades and about how marching soldiers often salute to the dignitaries who may be present at the time of the march, or the march time of the parade. Um, that's kind of an example of doing sajda. So it's not necessarily prostration in the sense of falling down on the ground and having your forehead touch the ground. Um, so I'll try to retain the Arabic word, and because I do not at all agree that God means prostrate, because there are many other verses in the Quran that very clearly beg the question of whether or not um, it could even mean that. Because, for example, God talks about how the trees that we see all around us do sujud. Do trees actually have their heads going all the way down to the ground to do that to God? Um, Not judging by what our eyes tell us. So I think it means something different. It means a mark of respect. Um, so going back to the verse, when we said to the angels, do sujud to Adam, fasajadu, they did it. Illa Iblis, first mention um, in this surah, but are also if you count Surah Al-Fatiha, um, of Iblis as a character, except Iblis. He refused and was arrogant and became of the kafirin. What is happening here? God asks the angels to do sujud to Adam, to salute to show a mark of respect of a particular kind, perhaps to Adam. They did it. Fasajadu. Except Iblis. The context may suggest that Iblis is one of the angels. We are told elsewhere in the Quran that Iblis is made up of um, fire, and therefore he is of the jinn, because God tells us very explicitly that the jinn are made of fire. So we have a fourth entity here. There's God, there are the angels, there is Adam, and we have mentioned here another entity who's being named here. So interesting, because Adam is also named, the angels are not being named here. Um, so Iblis. Iblis is the entity that's being named here. He is being introduced to us as being part of the whole um, congregation here, and we are being told that he refused. And it seems from the phrasing that his refusal to do what God asked him to do made him undergo some kind of a transformation. So, leading us to believe that he was not the things that he is set to become after he refused God. Was arrogant. You don't think of the word arrogance or arrogant with so much, um, or as being possessed with so much negative connotation, but clearly in this context, it's being made very clear that this is not what you want, right? This is like an unhappy state of affairs and a very gravely negative state of affairs. He was arrogant and became of the kafirin. We talked at length, I talked at length about the word kufr. I will just do a brief reminder. Kufr is connected to farming and the actual act of hiding the seed under the ground. So kufr is not just being a disbeliever. Kafir is someone who hides the truth, meaning he knows the truth or she knows the truth and still hides it. Um, Also, it is, and elsewhere in the Quran, it is translated as a rejecter, as a denier, and so on. So Iblis's non-compliance in this particular case results in two different things according to God. One of which is that he becomes arrogant, and the second one is that he became of the kafirin. A very good note for those of us who are afraid of being or becoming kafirs. We should not reject or refuse to abide by um, God's instructions, because if we do, the case in point suggests that we are going to undergo the same trajectory as Iblis, which is that we too will become arrogant, and the next stop seems to be becoming kafirs. Next verse, verse 34. وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمَ أَسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةَ وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ فَتَكُونَا مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Translation. And we said, O Adam, dwell you and your spouse in paradise, and eat from it freely, wherever you wish. But do not approach this tree, lest you be of the Zwalimin. I kept the word Zwalimin here, you must have noted, to first of all point out one thing. It says wrongdoers here, the translation. The Quran that I read shows very clearly that it's a very intriguing word, and it's much more than doing wrong. Zwalimin, if you actually look up Lane's dictionary, I've mentioned that before, and if you keep the Quranic context in mind, is doing wrong to oneself. Yes, it includes doing wrong to others, but it also includes within the umbrella of its meanings the idea that you're doing wrong to yourself. We said to Adam, God often speaks several places already from the verses that I've read. He speaks of himself both in the singular and in the plural. Now, why he does that, I do not know. But I do know that he does that throughout the entirety of the Quran. And it is a very intriguing phenomenon, especially when we consider that the Quran highlights countless number of times the fact that his oneness is the most important, the central fact of faith, of the kind that he wants us to believe. So it's very interesting that he is someone who speaks of himself both in the singular as well as in the plural. We said to Adam, O Adam, we said, O Adam, live you and your spouse in paradise. It's translated, Jannat is being translated as paradise here. Jannat means garden. So I guess the word paradise is also kind of supposed to be a garden, so we'll keep that. Eat from here freely, wherever you wish. I would like to draw your attention to the level of freedom that God is giving Adam here. He and his wife are being asked to live in this garden and eat freely from wherever they wish. But do not approach this tree, lest you become of the Zwalimin. One tree is all that Adam and his wife are being asked not to approach. And what is the reason cited? God, the maker and creator of the world, does not have to give us a reason, but he does. And he says it is the act of going and eating from that tree will increase the prospect of, or raise the prospect of, them doing wrong unto themselves. So, if we just do a quick run of the series of events that are happening here, we are having God announce to the angels of his decision to place humans as vicegerents, angels demurring, protesting that decision, and implicitly saying that they are better suited to the task of vicegerency because of two qualities that they have, one of which is that they purify for God, and that they glorify God, and they do so with gratitude. And simultaneously, they point out that humans, unfortunately, according to them, are not suited to the task because they somehow know, uh, even before humans have been placed on this earth, that humans would do two things that are undeniably true of human beings, which is that they would corrupt the earth, make it worse than it is, and that they will shed blood. God um, responds to this and tells the angels that they do not have the information necessary to understand this phenomenon that they're kind of expressing lack of understanding for. And he mercifully kind of explains to them that um, Adam is given by him something that the angels have not been given by him. And this has to do with Adam's capacity to know the names of everything and repeat the names of everything. Um, Even though it's pointed out here that the angels have not been taught this, and so they do not. If they do not know, it's because they have not been taught by God. And if Adam does know, it is because God has taught Adam. Angels back off. They admit that they do not know anything beyond what God has taught them. And God proceeds to demonstrate Adam's capacity by asking him to repeat the names. Adam does so. And then God asks the angels, kind of scoldingly, did I not tell you that I know everything in the earth, including what you have told me and what you have held back, what you have not told me? Next comes this command where he says to the angels that they should do sujud to Adam. They do so promptly, but there is somebody present in this space who refuses to do it. We are introduced to this creature, and we are being told that he's called Iblis, and we are also told that this refusal, this non-compliance, makes him become arrogant and become a kafir, one of the kafir. Next, God tells us that he um, informs Adam where he would stay or dwell, and it is paradise, and he is being asked to live there with his wife, or the word that is used here is zawjaka, spouse. It's often translated as spouse, or your kind of counterpart, female if you're a male, and male if you're a female. Um, and they are given the freedom to eat freely from wherever they want, with one proviso, that they do not approach a particular tree, only one tree. And God even goes so far as to explain to them that he doesn't want that to happen, because this will ensue in their becoming the Zalimin. Okay, verse 35. فَأَزَلَّهُمَا الشَّيْطَانُ عَنْهَا فَأَخْرَجَهُمَا مما كان فيه وقلنا اهبطوا بعضكم لبعض عدو ولكم في الأرض مستقر ومتاع إلى حين. Then made them slip, shayateen, Satan, from it, and he got them out from it, from what they were in it. And we said, go down, some of you enemies to others. And for you in the earth is a dwelling place and a provision for a period, for a time. So Satan made them slip from it. From it, the pronoun clearly refers to the Jannah, or paradise, that God just mentioned in the previous verse. And he made them leave it, leave that place, leave the place they were in. And we know that the place that they were in from the previous verse is Jannat. And then God speaks to them and says, go down from here. So it's probably a higher plane than, I'm sorry, paradise is at a higher plane than this earth because we're talking about going down. Could be metaphoric too, of course. Go down from here. The state that's going to encompass you will be that you will be enemies, some of you, to others. But alongside that bad news is the good news that in the earth will be a dwelling place and mata'un, provision for a time. This is how we came about to exist on earth, according to the Quran. Satan made our forefathers, Adam and Eve, slip, and he made us leave or exit paradise and brought us into an existence where some of us will always be enemies to others. However, as we discovered, we have a dwelling place on this earth and we have provision. However, it is for a time. It is temporary. We are not here forever. It's not a permanent existence, and it is a phase. That is what it means when he says it is for a time, meaning it is not the permanent state of affairs for human beings, which gels perfectly with not only our desire for immortality that we all of us find in ourselves, whether we talk about it or not. It also speaks to our dissatisfaction with the brevity and the temporal quality of life. So simultaneously, Adam is being given horrible news, which is that he has to exit this Jannah from where he could have eaten freely, wherever he wanted to from, and is going to be sent to this space, which is at a lower plane than where he was before because it's going down, explicitly going down, is what constitutes his exiting paradise. But also, that there's provisions here. So God provides for us here. God provides for us. Totally challenges our notions that we provide for ourselves, right? We think of going out to work and then earning money and then supporting ourselves. Not the picture that the Quran is presenting here. The Quran is saying that whatever we need for existence is being provided. It is here, present. Interesting. Okay. This verse makes my hair stand on end. Verse 36. فَتَلَقَّى آدَمُ مِنْ رَبِّهِ كَلِمَاتٍ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ. Then Adam received from his Lord words. So he turned towards it. He turned over it. He turned on it. Inna, he is turning, merciful. Okay, quite a few things to unpack here. But I would like to begin by pointing out the immense significance that I talked about a little earlier about God's words. Words not mediated by humans, words not deciphered by humans, not touched by humans, not corrupted by humans. God's words. What do they do? What did they do for Adam? He turned on them. Alayhi is translated as he turned toward him. However, alay is on if you look up the dictionary. And he could mean him, sure, but also the words themselves. So when Adam turned, the means by which he turned toward God are the words. God's words, as the beginning of the verse points out. Adam received from his Lord words. This is crucial, crucial, crucial. And I'll try to clarify what I mean by that in a minute, inshallah. The latter part of the verse says, Inna, he is Tawwab ar-Rahim. Tawwab means turning. Rahim is, of course, merciful. Clearly describing God here. God turns, right? Adam just basically betrayed God. Refused to listen to the one simple request that was made of him, simple order or command that was made of him. Successfully let Satan get him out of paradise. But God turned toward him. Why does God turn? Because he turns. That's an intrinsic quality of God, that he turns. He is also merciful. What I want to talk about and focus on over here is twofold. One is something that you may have already guessed, which is that in our existence, in this maze that we discover ourselves in, where we are lost again and again and again and again throughout our entire lives, often reaching the point where we don't know why we are here, what our existence means, where we are going, where we have come from, etc. I feel this is something that should bring hope, give us courage, and very clear guidance. Because you know, I hope, and have had occasion to discover that whatever we humans tamper with, to go back to the idea that angels talked about, which is that we will corrupt the earth. We know that that's completely and absolutely true, right? Just look at the world. I don't think I need to convince anybody about this fact. But also, if you look at the sorry state of every religion, including Islam, in this world, what humans have done to God's words and God's instructions, whether we're talking Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, it is horrendous, nightmarish, and if anyone actually thinks about it, completely unacceptable state of affairs, right? And my wager, and the Quran, which is completely based on and backed by the Quran, is that it is because of the human tendency to tamper with the words that God has given us. We received words. We have always received words going clearly all the way back to the first human, Adam, as is borne out by the words that I just read for you. He has always given us words, and he has turned, he continues to turn. That is his quality. He is merciful. But the only way of saving ourselves is to do what Adam did, which is turn but on the words of God. So alayhi, I am arguing here, is not turned toward him, but turned using those words, turned based on those words, right? Let the words create the trajectory, the bridge that he needed to know how to turn back to God, because he had lost his position. He was lost. Next verse. قُلْنَا اهْبِطُوا مِنْهَا جَمِيعًا فَإِمَّا يَأْتِيَنَّكُم مِّنِّي هُدًى فَمَن تَبِعَ هُدَايَ فَلَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. What I just said to you is reinforced by the following words. We said, leave from here, all of you. And when comes to you from me guidance, then whoever follows my guidance, no fear on them, and not they will grieve. God is saying, it's final, right? God has said, God is saying, leave here, from here, all of you. Remember, I read earlier, some of the enemies to others. So the enemies here are Satan, Adam, Eve. Not just that Adam and Eve are in one group and Satan in the other group, and that they're enemies to each other, but all are potentially enemies to each other. So leave here. When comes to you my guidance, whoever follows my guidance, no fear on them, and they will not grieve. So the key to save ourselves from our fallen state of existence, from being lost, from having to live here, because we are human, because we are all Adam's descendants. We do have recourse to safety, and it is outlined here. Whoever follows my guidance when it comes to us, whoever follows God's guidance when it comes to us, we will have no fear and we will not grieve. So if we are fearing and if we are grieving, it means that we are not following God's words. You're not following God's guidance. Let that be a litmus test, according to the words that are being presented here. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, next verse. وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ النَّارِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. Very clear delineation of the consequences of not listening to these words. And those who would reject these words, I have no idea why the translator put this into the past tense. Whoever disbelieves, doesn't make any sense. So obviously whoever disbelieves in the verses and deny our ayat, our signs, our words, because ayat both means verse and sign, those will be the companions of fire. They will abide in it forever. Please note that he is not saying anything other than one simple fact, which is that denying his verses, rejecting his words, His guidance entails not simply being lost, not simply being in a state of unhappiness, but constitutes enough of a crime to be relegated to becoming companions of the fire and burning in it forever. Simple rejection of God's words. That is, I think, where I should stop, because verse 39 begins by addressing the children of Israel, who I think are a very specific, uh, perhaps special, but also very illustrative kind of example of how we continue to be Adam's descendants and continue to receive God's favors and continue to be extremely ungrateful and continue to carry on the inheritance we received from Adam, which is to be ungrateful and to reject God's words. A few parting words. In my search for the truth, in my search for guidance, in my search for finding something that is absolutely true and not something that would disappoint me after I have dallied with it for a few words, I'm sorry, for a few days or a few months or a few years of my life, I have found the Quran to be not just satisfying, but above every single other text or form of guidance that I have encountered. I have let that fact help me figure out whether or not these are the words of God, the one who has made me. And I invite you to do exactly the same thing. Read the words and judge for yourself and see if it resonates with you in a way that no other text can. But there is one qualification, which is that you really have to care about finding guidance, about finding the truth, not for anybody else, but for yourself. Just for yourself, and perhaps for those you love, but primarily and predominantly for yourself. Like if you are looking for light, if you're looking for a way out of this horrendous state of existence that our lives on earth can be and often is, the utter meaninglessness of existence, I invite you to read the book and try to genuinely understand it and not look at it through the lens of, I don't know. There are so many lenses that we can kind of cook up, right? All right. Thank you for listening. Hopefully, another reading very soon. Bye bye.